Hello and welcome back to World Talks, where every word matters, with me, Anna Kalczynska. What might have passed as a provocative speech or eccentric political voyeurism so far now sounds more and more worrying. President-elect Donald Trump quite openly suggests U.S. territorial expansion. Speaking from his private Florida club, President-elect Trump refused to rule out using force to retake the Panama Canal and to claim Greenland. Vanessa Tinker, PhD lecturer at Collegium Civitas, joins us now to elaborate on Donald Trump's latest statement and/or political plans. Good evening, madam. So maybe just to avoid any misunderstandings, I suggest we listen to the excerpts of the press conference at Mar-a-Lago.
We need Greenland for national security purposes. I've been told that for a long time, long before I even ran. I mean, people have been talking about it for a long time. You have approximately 45,000 people there. People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it. But if they do, they should give it up because we need it for national security.
Right, so we need Greenland for national security purposes. Is this an expression of nationalist power by making a territorial claim?
I mean, this is very, I would say, typical of Trump. I mean, he has to appeal to his base. And I think it's pretty common in a lot of his press conferences. It largely comes across as unhinged, unfiltered. And I think it's actually conscious, it's strategic, it's part of his communication style. And so, yes, you could say maybe he's testing his boundaries in terms of what the response and reaction of the audience will be. Obviously, in the recent discussion he had today, talking about what he's going to, refusing to say whether or not the U.S. would use the American military or other means. The fact that he's making these kind of statements, obviously it's very unsettling for U.S. allies, but I don't think it's per se anything out of the ordinary of what he typically has said in the past. I mean, even in 2019, he was saying he wanted to buy Greenland. I mean, this is his nature. He likes to make these bold statements, but there's not often very much follow-up of some type of nuanced or real policy of how would this be possible. So I feel that he often makes these bold statements, these bold kind of threats, wanting to get some kind of response, reaction, and testing his boundaries. And I think that's one of his strategies.
Right, like you rightly pointed out, it's not the first time Donald Trump makes such a claims. But after he repeated his interest in buying Greenland last month, the Danish government announced a huge boost in defense spending for the island. So now the Denmark has been considered a friendly country from the U.S. point of view, a NATO ally, important NATO ally. So even if we regarded Donald Trump's words as throwing mud into the game, what would be the purpose of it?
I mean, look, Greenland is obviously strategic for security and our national interest. Obviously, there's an Arctic battle going on, and Greenland is strategic in terms of a passageway potentially in the near future. It's mineral rich. There's oil. There's gas reserves. So it's obviously not just in the U.S. interest. I mean, China is interested, Russia's interested. But in terms of Greenland and where it's positioned, I mean, it'll be interesting to kind of follow. Greenland's made bold statements that they're not for sale. And obviously Denmark is in suit with that. I mean, they're obviously, saying no, there's no way that we're going to give away Greenland. Who's to say in the future that Greenland's opposition party might be more willing or inclined to make or negotiate some type of agreement in return for Greenland's independence, that maybe they have some arrangement with the U.S., but the U.S. already has a significant presence there as it stands. So it's hard again to say, and who's going to pay for it? I mean, are the American people going to pay for it to buy Greenland? I think it's more in the U.S. interest to make more solid agreements and arrangements. I mean, we already have significant security arrangements made. So it's hard again to really, see whether or not is Donald Trump just testing the waters? Is he serious about this claim? I guess, anything's possible, but I find it really hard to think that there'll be more to it than just a threat. I don't see how he would, even if he wanted to, get away with it, unless, again, the opposition, and again, that's why it'll be interesting to follow kind of what takes place within Greenland, because obviously Greenland has also made the claim that they want to be freed from the shackles of being colonized by Denmark. So that's a pretty bold claim as well. So Greenland might find that it is in their interest to cooperate more and align themselves more with the U.S. So,
but you see, we are already in the game. First, we dismissed this claim, and the second, we already tried to think where the money could come from. But anyway, obviously, these comments prompt nervousness in Greenland and Denmark. The Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said in an interview that the future of Greenland is to be defined in Greenland. The Greenland Prime Minister Mute Egede said Greenland's not for sale. And all of this happens as Donald Trump's junior paying visit to Greenland. And at the same time, Copenhagen Post writes, the son of the US president-elect appears to have been sent by his father to lay the groundwork for a potential US takeover of Greenland. So it's understandably, both Greenland and Danish public opinion seems worried, right?
Yeah, at the same time, of course, Donald Trump Jr. is saying, that he's there for really a holiday, or it's not at all related. It's not there's no political agenda. But obviously, I find that hard to believe. I think there is probably something going on. To what extent, again, I don't know. I mean, there is kind of like behind the scenes, these ideas that maybe he's talking with opposition, trying to lay the groundwork that way, kind of the side doors. So I think, again, it's going to be really critical to pay attention to kind of Greenland. I mean, obviously, Denmark has a lot to say in this, but I think, again, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out in terms of politically and internally what's going on in Greenland. But definitely it's set the alarm bells. And I think that's what Trump's really good at doing. And I think these types of statements keeps him in the media. I mean, I think, again, that's one of his strategies. By making these really bold, alarming statements, it helps Trump and his support base, basically take over and dominate media.
Absolutely, and he portrays himself as a strong leader and powerful and leader. But separately, in recent weeks, Trump has threatened to reassert control over the Panama Canal, another potential area for conflict, and one of the two most important world's waterways. He has accused Panama of excessive fees for access to it. So let's take a listen.
You're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. But I can say this. We need them for economic security. The Panama Canal was built for our military. I'm not going to commit to that now. It might be that you'll have to do something. Look, the Panama Canal is vital to our country. It's being operated by China. And we gave the Panama Canal to Panama. We didn't give it to China. And they've abused it. They've abused that gift. It should have never been made, by the way. Giving the Panama Canal is why Jimmy Carter lost the election, in my opinion, more so maybe than the hostages. The hostages were a big deal. But if you remember, and nobody wants to talk about the Panama Canal now because, it's inappropriate, I guess, but because it's a bad part of the Carter legacy. But he was a good man. Look, he was a good man. I knew him a little bit, and he was a very fine person, but that was a big mistake. Giving the Panama Canal to Panama was a very big mistake.
So now, what could be the potential consequence of regaining the control of the Panama Canal by the USA? Is that even doable?
I don't think that they can just take over the Panama. I mean, I guess anything is possible, but I can see that this threat, what it's more intended to do is to reduce the cost. Again, I think some of the things, of course, that Trump is saying is actually fair, in the sense that Panama is charging the U.S. more. In terms of, it doesn't seem fair how the Trump administration looks at it, that there's an increased fees that we've been facing, and that something has to change, as costing the U.S. a lot of money. And so I can foresee that with these types of threats, there'll be behind the scenes more negotiations taking place, reducing these tariffs, possibly more of a military presence there. That I think is potentially possible. So it's really a tough one, but it is, of course, in the U.S. national security and national interest for the U.S. more involved in the Panama Canal.
Right, but from a public relation point of view, saying and not pursuing and not doing and not being in action really is also a big mistake, right? Especially for a leader of United States of America who claims to make America great again. So what's the strategy in here?
Yeah, and so that's just it. I mean, I think, he hasn't officially, and that's everything he says is always quite vague. It's quite broad. So it looks very bold, but then when you unpackage it, what substantially would that mean? And he's not committing, again, to using the military. He's threatening that it's not also off, the limits, that there could be military intervention if need be. So again, leaving that possibility out there and that threat out there, it places, Panama in kind of more a vulnerable position. And so because Trump does want to be seen as someone who takes bold action, is a man of his word, he's going to be a doer from the day he takes office. So I don't think that nothing will come of it, of these threats, but will it actually require the U.S. taking over Panama? That seems quite extreme. But, because of China, as he mentions, China's entanglements in the Panama, there is this perceived threat that China and the U.S. are going to start clashing, in not just Panama and other areas as well. But, it feels that it would be quite radical in the sense of an actual takeover, military takeover.
Exactly. Or maybe it's just a question of venue and time. Maybe it's a different thing to speak from Mar-a-Lago and a different thing in the White House, right? Let's see. Yeah. Time will tell. Vanessa Tinker, lecturer from Collegium Civitas, was our guest tonight. Thank you very much for your comments and insights. Thank you very much once again. And thank you for watching, and that concludes this edition of World Talks. But please stay with us at TVP World.